As the first light of dawn crept into my room, I felt an unsettling chill wrap around me like a shroud. The air was thick with an electric tension that sent shivers down my spine. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself it was just the remnants of a nightmare. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. There was something lurking, something dark and sinister, waiting for me to acknowledge its presence. The faintest whisper danced through the stillness of the morning, barely audible but undeniably there. It was a sound I couldn't quite place, a haunting call that seemed to beckon me from the shadows. I sat up, rubbing my eyes and willing the eerie sensation to dissipate. Just my imagination, I muttered to myself, swinging my legs over the side of the bed and planting my feet on the cold wooden floor. I forced myself into my morning routine, but the chill lingered like an unwelcome guest. As I got dressed, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the mirror. My eyes looked hollow, sunken with unease. "You need to get a grip, Jake," I said, trying to shake off the feeling. But no matter how hard I tried, the whisper remained, echoing in the back of my mind. The walk to college usually cleared my head, but today was different. The streets of our small town felt foreign, as if they were tainted by an invisible fog. I quickened my pace, desperate to reach the familiarity of the campus. As I approached the entrance, I spotted Emma sitting on a bench, her auburn hair catching the morning light. She looked up and smiled, but the warmth of her expression did little to quell the unease that clung to me. "Hey, Jake, you look like you've seen a ghost," she teased, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Funny you should say that," I replied, forcing a laugh. "I had a weird night. You know, the usual. Dark dreams, strange noises." I didn't want to burden her with the details, not yet. Emma raised an eyebrow, sensing my discomfort. "What kind of strange noises?" I hesitated, searching for the right words. "Just whispers." It felt like something was trying to get my attention. Her expression softened, and she leaned closer. "You've been under a lot of stress with classes and everything. Maybe it's just your mind playing tricks on you." "Yeah, maybe," I said, though I wasn't convinced. This was different. It was more than just stress. It felt like a warning. As we walked to our psychology class, I shared my thoughts about the recent disappearances in our town. It's like people are just vanishing without a trace. "Have you noticed how tense everyone is lately?" Emma nodded, her brow furrowed. "It's unsettling. I overheard some of the professors talking about it. They think it might be connected to the old stories about that cult that used to operate here." I shivered at the mention of the cult. I had heard the tales as a child, whispered late at night around campfires. They were supposed to be just stories, legends meant to scare kids into behaving. But now they felt too real, too close for comfort. "Do you think it could have something to do with the disappearances?" I asked, my heart racing at the thought. "Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me," Emma replied. "If those stories have any truth to them, it might explain why people are so on edge." After class, the weight of our conversation lingered in the air. I suggested we visit the local library to dig deeper into the town's history. Emma's eyes lit up with excitement. "Great idea. Maybe we'll find something that connects the dots." The library was a labyrinth of dusty books and ancient artifacts, a place where time seemed to stand still. As we navigated through the aisles, I felt a sense of foreboding wash over me. The air was thick with the scent of old paper, and the dim light cast eerie shadows on the walls. We settled into a small corner table, surrounded by stacks of books. Emma flipped through a hefty volume on local history, her brow furrowing in concentration. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a passage that detailed the cult's rituals. They used to gather on nights of the full moon to perform ceremonies. Some believed they were trying to harness dark powers. I swallowed hard, the words echoing in my mind. "That sounds like something out of a horror movie." Emma nodded, her expression serious. "But what if it's not just a story? What if they really were doing something sinister?" I shivered again, the whispers in my mind growing louder. "We need to find out more about those disappearances. There has to be a connection." As we dug deeper into the archives, I stumbled upon an old book filled with newspaper clippings. My heart raced as I flipped through the yellowed pages. There it was, a headline that sent chills down my spine. Local family vanishes without a trace. The date was decades old, but the picture of the family struck a chord within me. "Emma, look at this," I said, pointing to the photograph. "They look so familiar." She leaned over, squinting at the image. "I think I've seen them before, at that festival last month." My stomach dropped. "You're right. I remember seeing them. They seemed so normal." The whispers grew louder, swirling in my mind like a tempest. It was as if the past was reaching out to me, urging me to uncover its secrets. I felt a sudden urge to leave the library, to escape the weight of the history surrounding us. "Let's take a break," I suggested, my voice shaky. "I need some air." As we stepped outside, the sun had begun its descent, casting long shadows across the pavement. I took a deep breath, trying to clear my head, but the chill remained. It was as if the darkness was waiting, lurking just beyond the edges of my consciousness. "Are you okay?" Emma asked, concern etching her features. "Yeah, just overwhelmed, I guess. Let's grab a coffee. That might help," she offered, her tone gentle yet insistent. We walked to our favorite cafe, the familiar sights and sounds momentarily distracting me from the unease that clung to my thoughts. As we sipped our drinks, I tried to shake off the feeling of dread, but the whispers persisted, a haunting reminder that something was very wrong in our town. "Jake, I know this is a lot to take in," Emma said, breaking the silence, "but whatever it is, we'll figure it out together. You don't have to face this alone." Her words offered a semblance of comfort, but deep down, I knew I was grappling with something far more personal. The shadow I felt was not just a consequence of our town's dark history. It was a reflection of my own fears and insecurities. "I appreciate that, Emma. I really do," I replied, forcing a smile. "But there's something else going on, something I can't quite put my finger on." "Let's keep digging," she encouraged, her eyes bright with determination. "We'll uncover the truth, whatever it is." As we finished our drinks and prepared to leave, I couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness was closing in. The whispers echoed in my mind, urging me to confront the shadows that lurked not only in the corners of our town, but within myself. With Emma by my side, I knew we would face whatever lay ahead. But as we stepped back into the world, I couldn't shake the sense that the answers we sought would come at a price, one I wasn't sure I was ready to pay. As I stepped out of my house that morning, a chill wrapped around me like a thick fog. It wasn't just the cool air of early autumn. It felt deeper, more sinister. I shook my head, trying to dispel the feeling of dread, but it clung to me, an unwelcome companion. The streets of our small town were quiet, the kind of stillness that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I made my way to the campus, where I found Emma sitting on a bench, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders. She looked up, her green eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Jake, you look like you've seen a ghost. What's wrong?" "Just weird vibes, I guess," I replied, trying to shrug it off. "I feel like something's coming, something bad." Emma leaned forward, her expression serious. "You're not the only one. Have you seen the news? There's been another disappearance." I nodded, my stomach twisting. "Yeah, I saw the report. It's like this wave of darkness is sweeping through the town." "Maybe we should look into it," she suggested, her voice steady. "You know, investigate the stories surrounding these disappearances." "Are you serious?" I asked, a mix of excitement and fear coursing through me. "What if we dig up something we shouldn't?" "Come on, Jake. You've always been the brave one. If something's really happening, we can't just sit here and wait for it to come for us too." Her determination was infectious, and I found myself nodding. After our classes, we headed to the local library. The smell of old books and dust filled the air as we searched through records and archives. Emma flipped through the pages, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Look at this," she said, pointing to an old newspaper clipping. "It mentions a cult that used to operate in the area. They were rumored to have performed rituals." "A cult?" I echoed, feeling a shiver run down my spine. What kind of rituals? Rituals tied to the lunar cycle. They believed that certain nights were more powerful for their ceremonies. Emma looked at me, her expression serious. Jake, this could be connected to the disappearances, or just a dark part of our town's history, I replied, trying to rationalize the fear creeping in. Let's not jump to conclusions. But as I read the articles, I couldn't shake the feeling that the past was clawing its way back into our lives. The weight of the unknown pressed on my chest. We finished our research and stepped outside, the evening air mixing with the growing sense of unease. During our walk back, something caught my eye. A poster was plastered on a lamppost, fluttering slightly in the breeze. I approached it, my heart sinking as I recognized the face smiling back at me. Emma, look, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She came over, her expression shifting to one of horror. No, that's Hannah. I just saw her at that party last week. Another disappearance? I muttered, feeling the panic rise within me. This can't be a coincidence. Jake, we need to talk to someone. Maybe someone who knows about the town's history, Emma suggested, her voice shaking slightly. Someone who remembers the cult. I agreed, and we began walking towards the outskirts of town, where an elderly man named Mr. Thompson lived. He was known for his stories about the past, always filled with strange occurrences. When we reached his house, the air felt heavier, as if the very ground beneath us was steeped in secrets. Mr. Thompson? Emma called out, knocking on the door. He opened it, his eyes narrowing at the sight of us. What brings you kids here? Mr. Thompson, we're investigating the disappearances, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. We've heard about a cult that used to operate in the area. His face paled, and he stepped aside, allowing us to enter. The interior was cramped, filled with books and old photographs. You kids should steer clear of that, he warned, his voice low. The cult practiced dark arts. They believed in sacrificing to keep the town safe. Sacrificing? Emma echoed, her voice trembling. Every full moon, they would gather in the woods, he continued, his gaze distant. Many believe the disappearances are tied to those rituals. Some truths are better left buried. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. But we can't just ignore this. People's lives are at stake. Some things are better left forgotten, son, he replied, his tone grave. You don't want to awaken what's been sleeping. As we left, I could feel the weight of his words pressing down on me. The more we learned, the deeper the rabbit hole seemed to go. That night, I lay in bed, unable to shake the feeling that I was being watched. The shadows in my room grew darker, more pronounced, and I found myself staring at the ceiling wide awake. The dreams began soon after. I was standing in a clearing surrounded by trees, the moon high above me. Figures cloaked in darkness circled around, their chants echoing in my ears. I'd wake up gasping for breath, the weight of the world pressing down on my chest. Each night was the same, and each morning I'd feel more anxious than the Ultimo. Jake, are you all right? Emma asked the next day as we met at the cafe. I could see the concern etched on her face. I don't know, Emma, I admitted, running a hand through my hair. These dreams, I feel like I'm losing my grip on reality. They're so real. Maybe we should talk to someone about it. A therapist or something, she suggested, her eyes wide with worry. No, I can't do that, I replied sharply. I don't want to be seen as weak. Jake, this isn't about weakness. This is about your well-being, she countered, her voice firm. You're not alone in this. We're in this together. As we sat in the cafe, the atmosphere felt heavy, as if the weight of the discussion was pressing down on the very walls. I felt the eyes of the townsfolk on us, their whispers a constant reminder that we were treading dangerous ground. We can't back down now, I said, suddenly resolute. If there's a connection between the disappearances and the cult, we need to find out what it is before it's too late. Emma nodded, her determination mirroring mine. Then let's dig deeper. We need to find out more about those rituals and anyone who might still be connected to them. As we walked back through town, the feeling of being watched intensified. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see a figure lurking in the shadows. My mind raced with the possibilities of what we might uncover. The world around me felt alive with secrets, and I was desperate to unravel them before they consumed me whole. The air was thick with tension as Emma and I sat in the small cafe in the heart of our town, the dim light casting shadows across the table. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee mixed with the faint scent of something sweet, but I could hardly focus on it. My mind was racing, and all I could think about were the secrets lurking beneath the surface of our seemingly tranquil community. I took a deep breath, trying to shake off the feeling that had been gnawing at me since my last encounter with that dark presence. "Emma," I started, my voice low, "I can't shake the feeling that we're being watched. Every time I close my eyes, I see those shadows." She leaned in closer, concern etched on her face. "Jake, I know this is hard for you, but we need to dig deeper into what's happening here. Those disappearances, they can't just be coincidences." As I sipped my coffee, I felt a chill creep up my spine, a reminder of the icy grip of dread that had been haunting me. "You know, the locals are not going to like it if we start asking questions about the past. They're protective of their secrets." Emma nodded, but her determination was unwavering. "We can't let fear stop us. Remember what we found in the library? The records about the cult? There has to be a connection." I hesitated, staring into my cup as if the swirling liquid could provide some answers. What if we dig too deep? What if we uncover something that's better left hidden? Suddenly, a group of townspeople entered the cafe, their laughter echoing against the walls. I recognized a few of them, familiar faces from school and community events. But as they spotted us, their expressions shifted, and I felt the weight of their gazes like a physical force. They approached our table, and I could sense the tension in the air. "Jake, Emma," one of them, a man named Tom, said, his tone casual but the underlying warning clear. "You two should be careful. There are some things about this town that are better left alone." I forced a smile, but my stomach churned. "We're just having coffee, Tom. No harm in that, right?" He shrugged, but his eyes were serious. "Just don't go poking around where you don't belong. Some truths can be dangerous." "Thanks for the advice," I replied, trying to sound nonchalant, but Emma's hand squeezed mine under the table. I could feel her pulse racing, mirroring my own anxiety. After they left, Emma glared at the door as it swung closed behind them. "Did you see that? They're trying to intimidate us. They want to keep us from finding out the truth. Or they're just trying to protect us," I said, though I didn't believe it. Deep down, I felt the same unease. Maybe they know things we don't. Exactly, and that's why we need to keep going. We can't stop now. Emma's passion ignited a flicker of courage within me. "Let's go check out that old house. The one where the cult used to meet." A wave of dread washed over me at the thought. The abandoned structure was notorious around town, a place shrouded in rumors and fear. "Are you sure that's a good idea? What if we find something we're not ready for?" Emma's expression softened. "Jake, I can't shake the feeling that our families are connected to all of this. We need to know what happened, for the people who disappeared, for ourselves." With a heavy heart, I nodded. We finished our drinks quickly, the weight of our decision hanging in the air. As we stepped outside, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows that danced across the pavement. The walk to the house felt longer than it should have. Each step was accompanied by the unsettling sensation of being watched, as if the very ground beneath my feet held secrets I was not meant to uncover. Emma walked beside me, her presence a reassuring anchor. When we arrived at the house, I took a moment to gather my thoughts. The structure loomed before us, its windows dark and foreboding, ivy creeping up the sides like fingers trying to reclaim what was once theirs. Symbols were etched into a nearby stone, remnants of ancient rituals long forgotten. "Look," Emma said, pointing to the carvings. "These are the same symbols we saw in the library. They're not just random." I swallowed hard, my mind racing. "Do you think there are still things inside? Evidence of what they did?" "Only one way to find out." Emma approached the door, her hand resting on the handle. I hesitated behind her, an instinctual urge to run battling with my curiosity. As the door creaked open, a musty smell hit us, sending a shiver down my spine. The interior was dark, cobwebs hanging from the ceiling like ghostly tendrils. Emma stepped inside, and I followed, my heart pounding in my chest. "Let's find that diary," she whispered, her eyes scanning the room. "Maybe it can tell us what they were doing." As we moved deeper into the house, I felt a growing sense of unease. The air was thick, almost suffocating, and I could hear my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. "Emma, are you sure we should be here?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She paused, turning to look at me. "We have to be brave. Whatever we find, we face it together." Just then, I heard a sound from above us, a soft thud that made my skin crawl. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but curiosity drew me closer. "What was that?" "I don't know," Emma replied, her brow furrowed in concern. "But we need to check it out." We climbed the rickety staircase, each step creaking ominously beneath our weight. The air grew colder as we ascended, and I could feel the presence that had been lingering around me intensifying. It was as if something was urging us to turn back, to abandon our search. When we reached the top, we found ourselves in a long hallway lined with doors, each one closed tight. The thud had come from somewhere within. "Should we open one?" Emma asked, glancing at me hesitantly. I shook my head, feeling the anxiety twist in my stomach. What if it's just the wind, or something worse? We won't know until we try. She reached for the nearest door, and I felt my heart race. "On 3. Okay?" "Okay," I replied, my voice trembling slightly. 1, 2, 3. Emma flung the door open, and we were met with darkness. I peered inside, my breath hitching as I caught sight of a broken mirror against the far wall, its shards reflecting our terrified faces. "Just a mirror," I exhaled, relief washing over me. But as I stepped further into the room, I felt the weight of an unseen force pressing down on me. "Look," Emma said softly, pointing to the floor. "There's something written here." I knelt down, brushing away the dust to reveal faded letters that formed words I couldn't quite make out. "What does it say?" Emma leaned closer, squinting. "It looks like names and dates." As I traced my fingers over the letters, I felt a jolt of recognition. These names, they're the same as the people who disappeared. A chill coursed through me, and I stood up abruptly, the room spinning. "This is bad, Emma. We shouldn't have come here. We have to leave." But before we could move, the air shifted, and I felt a presence, cold and heavy, enveloping us. Emma gasped, and I turned to her, panic rising within me. "Did you feel that?" "Yes," she whispered, her voice shaking. "We need to go. Now." As we backed away slowly, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were not alone. The shadows seemed to writhe, and I could almost hear whispers in the air, calling out to me. I felt as if I were being pulled, drawn toward something I couldn't comprehend. "Jake!" Emma's voice cut through the haze. "Let's get out of here." We stumbled back down the stairs, the oppressive atmosphere following us like a predator. I felt my heart racing, each beat drowning out the whispers that had plagued me since this all began. Once outside, we gasped for fresh air, the cool breeze a stark contrast to the stifling presence within the house. I leaned against the wall, trying to steady my racing heart. "What just happened?" "I don't know," Emma replied breathlessly, scanning our surroundings. "But we have to tell someone. We can't keep this to ourselves." "Who would believe us?" I asked, feeling the weight of despair settling over me. "They'll just think we're crazy. We have to try, Jake. We can't let fear control us. Not anymore." As we stood there, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that enveloped us. I felt the darkness creeping in again, the whispers growing louder in my mind. "I don't know if we can fight this." Emma took my hand, squeezing it tightly. "We will, together." In that moment, I realized I needed her strength. I had to confront the shadows, not just those lurking in the town, but the ones within me, The weight of our past was heavy, but I could no longer let as I stepped into the dilapidated house. The air felt thick and heavy, almost suffocating. Dust motes floated in the dim light that filtered through the cracked windows, and I could almost hear the whispers of time echoing around us. Emma was beside me, her eyes wide with a mix of excitement and trepidation. We had come here in search of answers, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were about to stumble upon something that was better left undisturbed. "Jake, do you really think we'll find anything here?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She glanced around as if expecting the shadows to come alive. "I don't know, but we have to try," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. The journal we had found in the library was our only lead, and the thought of what we might uncover sent chills down my spine. As we moved further into the house, I could feel the weight of history pressing down on us. The walls were adorned with peeling wallpaper, and the floor creaked under our weight. We entered what appeared to be a living room, and that's when I spotted it. A dusty, leather-bound diary resting on a shelf, almost as if it had been waiting for us. "Look at this," I called out, carefully lifting the journal from its resting place. The moment I opened it, a cloud of dust burst into the air, and I coughed. Emma leaned in closer, and her eyes widened as she scanned the pages filled with scrawled handwriting. "These are names and dates," she murmured, tracing her finger over the ink. I leaned in to get a better look, and my heart raced as I recognized some of the names. They were the same names from the missing persons reports we had seen around town. "Emma, these people, they vanished. Do you think it has something to do with that cult?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly as the implications settled in. "Maybe. Look here." She pointed to a passage that described rituals performed during the full moon. It says they believed that the sacrifices would keep something at bay. But what were they afraid of? The unease that had been lurking in the back of my mind morphed into something more menacing. I flipped through the pages, and the further I read, the more horrifying details I uncovered. Symbols, chants, and a list of offerings. It was all too much, and I felt the familiar grip of anxiety tightening around my chest. "Jake, are you okay?" Emma asked, her brow furrowed with concern. I must have looked pale because my heart was racing, and I could feel a cold sweat forming. I don't know. This feels wrong. Like we shouldn't be here," I admitted, shaking my head. The shadows seemed to creep closer, and I could almost hear them whispering, taunting me. "Maybe we should take this back and analyze it more carefully," Emma suggested, but I could see the determination in her eyes. She wanted to stay to uncover the truth, just as much as I did. Before I could respond, a noise echoed from the upper floor, a creaking sound that sent my heart into overdrive. I exchanged a glance with Emma, and we both knew that we had to investigate. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah, it came from upstairs," Emma replied, her eyes wide. "Let's check it out," I said, though every instinct screamed at me to run. We climbed the staircase, each step creaking ominously beneath our weight. The air grew colder as we reached the top landing, and I hesitated for a moment, my breath hitching in my throat. "Jake, are you sure about this?" Emma asked, her hand resting on my shoulder, grounding me in that moment. "I have to know," I said, pushing the door open. The room was dark, and as we stepped inside, the weak light from the window barely illuminated the space. In the corner, I spotted a broken mirror, its shards reflecting fragmented images of us. I walked toward it, entranced, and suddenly, a shiver ran down my spine as I caught a glimpse of something in the reflection, a figure standing behind us. I spun around, but there was nothing there. "Did you see that?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. "See what?" Emma replied, looking concerned. "There was someone behind us," I stammered, but Emma shook her head, dismissing my fears. "Jake, it's just an old house. Your mind is playing tricks on you," she said gently, but I could feel the tension in the air. Something was not right. As I turned back to the mirror, I was struck by the reflection of the room behind us. The shadows seemed to twist and writhe, and for a brief moment, I felt as if I were being pulled into another world, one where the past and present collided. The air felt charged, electric, and I could almost hear the echoes of laughter and chants from long ago. "Jake!" Emma's voice cut through the fog of my thoughts, pulling me back to reality. "We need to go. Now." I nodded, but as we turned to leave, I heard it again, the whisper, clearer this time. It called my name, a ghostly echo that sent a jolt of fear through me. "Wait, did you hear that?" I asked, stopping dead in my tracks. "Hear what?" Emma looked at me, her expression a mixture of confusion and concern. "The whisper. It's calling me," I said, my voice trembling. "Jake, we need to leave. This place is wrong," Emma urged, pulling at my arm, but I felt rooted to the spot, as if something was holding me back. "No, I have to know what it wants," I said, feeling a strange compulsion to stay. "Please, let's just go," she pleaded, her eyes wide with fear. I could see the worry etched on her face, but something deep inside me yearned to uncover the truth, to unravel the mystery that had ensnared us. "Emma, I can't. I need to understand," I replied, my voice firm. The whisper grew louder, more insistent, wrapping around me like a shroud. With a deep breath, I took a step toward the mirror, feeling its pull even stronger. The shadows danced and twisted, and I had the unsettling sensation that they were trying to tell me something important. Just as I reached out to touch the surface, Emma's hand grabbed mine, pulling me back. "Jake, don't!" she cried, her voice filled with desperation. And in that moment, I realized the danger that lay before us. Whatever was in this house had a hold on me, and if I wasn't careful, I could lose myself to it. Okay, let's go," I said, reluctantly stepping back from the mirror. Emma looked relieved, but I could feel the weight of the house pressing down on us, as if it were trying to keep us there. As we made our way back down the stairs, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had just scratched the surface of something far more sinister. The diary, the names, the rituals, everything was connected, and I knew that we had to uncover the truth no matter the cost. Outside, the cool night air hit us like a wave, and I took a deep breath, trying to clear my mind. But the whispers lingered, echoing in my thoughts, reminding me that our journey was far from over. Emma and I exchanged a determined look, both of us knowing that we had only just begun to unravel the dark tapestry of our town's past. The moment I stepped foot inside that house, a chill ran down my spine, and I felt like I was being watched. Emma and I had made our way here, driven by a mixture of curiosity and a deep-seated sense of dread. The air was thick with an unsettling energy, as if the walls themselves were whispering secrets long forgotten. I turned to Emma, who was examining the strange symbols etched into the walls. "Do you feel that?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She looked at me, her brow furrowed in concern. "Feel what?" "The air is just heavy, that's all." "No, it's more than that. It's like something is here with us." Emma stepped closer to me, her hand brushing against my arm for reassurance. "Jake, we're just being paranoid. We've already uncovered so much. Let's focus on the diary we found." I nodded, though the unease gnawed at me. The diary had revealed names of people who had vanished, and one name stood out to me like a beacon in the dark. My heart raced when I realized it belonged to one of my ancestors. What did this mean for me? Was I somehow connected to the darkness that had shrouded this town? "Hey," Emma said, breaking me from my thoughts. "Let's sit down and go through the pages again. Maybe there's something we missed." We settled on the dusty floor, surrounded by the remnants of a life long abandoned. As Emma flipped through the pages, the flickering light from our flashlight illuminated the scrawled handwriting. I leaned closer, trying to piece together the story behind the rituals described. "Look at this," Emma said, pointing to a passage. "It talks about a chosen one who would lead the ceremonies. Do you think that could be?" I swallowed hard, the realization hitting me like a wave. "I don't know, Emma, but it's possible. What if I'm tied to this in ways we can't even begin to understand?" Emma's expression shifted from curiosity to concern. Jake, you need to be careful. This is getting deeper than we anticipated. We should find someone who knows more about this. Someone who can help us make sense of it all. Who do you suggest? I asked, feeling the weight of despair settle on my shoulders. I heard about a paranormal expert who lives on the outskirts of town. We could go see him tomorrow. He might have insights into these rituals and... Before she could finish, a loud crash echoed from the floor above us. We froze, exchanging terrified glances. Did you hear that? Emma whispered, her voice trembling. Yeah, I replied, my heart racing. It came from upstairs. Without thinking, I stood up, my instincts kicking in. We should check it out. Emma hesitated, fear evident in her eyes. Are you sure? What if it's dangerous? I took a deep breath, trying to mask my own fear. We can't just ignore it. We need to know what's going on. We made our way up the creaking staircase, the air growing colder with each step. As we reached the top, I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. The hallway was shrouded in darkness, the only light coming from the small window at the end. Jake, maybe we should just go back, Emma urged, gripping my arm tightly. No, we need to see what it is. I insisted, steeling myself against the growing dread. We approached the door at the end of the hallway, the faintest sliver of light seeping through the cracks. I pushed it open, revealing a room filled with dust and remnants of what once was. In the center stood a broken mirror, its shards scattered across the floor, reflecting the fragmented light. Look at that, Emma said, stepping closer. It's showing us our reflections, but they look different. I squinted at the shards, my breath hitching in my throat. I could see myself, but there was something off about the way I appeared. Shadows flickered behind my reflection, and for a heartbeat, I thought I saw a figure standing just behind me. Jake, Emma called, concern lacing her voice. Are you all right? I stumbled back, shaking my head. I don't know. I just saw something familiar. Emma's eyes widened. What do you mean? I don't know how to explain it, but it felt like I was seeing someone else, someone from the past. Maybe it's connected to the rituals, she suggested, her voice barely above a whisper. These mirrors could have been used for something. Suddenly, I was overwhelmed by a wave of visions. Images flashed before my eyes. Dark figures in cloaks, candles flickering in the night, and a ceremony that felt eerily familiar. I gasped, clenching my head in agony as a voice echoed in my mind. Jake, are you okay? Emma's voice broke through the haze. I don't know. It's like I'm seeing things that happened here. It's overwhelming. I took a step back, trying to regain my composure. We need to get out of here. I can't stay any longer. As we turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the broken mirror one last time. The shadowy figure was there again, and this time, it reached out as if trying to pull me in. Jake, Emma shouted, pulling me away from the mirror. We need to go. We raced down the hallway, the weight of what I had seen pressing heavily on my chest. Outside, the night air was cool against my flushed skin, but it did little to ease the turmoil inside me. What was that? I gasped, leaning against the wall for support. I don't know, but we need to figure this out. You're connected to this, and we can't ignore it, Emma said, her eyes filled with determination. I knew she was right. I felt a compulsion to understand what was happening, to unravel the threads of my past and the secrets that bound me to this town. But the fear was still there, gnawing at my resolve. Let's go see that paranormal expert tomorrow, I finally said, my voice steadying. Maybe he can help us make sense of these visions. Okay, Emma agreed, the spark of hope returning to her eyes. But we need to be careful, Jake. We don't know what we're dealing with. As we walked back home, I couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness was closing in, that whatever waited for us in the shadows was far from over. And deep down, I knew that the answers we sought would come at a cost, one that I wasn't sure I was ready to pay. The air in the small room felt thick, almost electric, as I sat in the plush armchair opposite the paranormal specialist. Dr. Miller was his name, a man with a wiry frame and tousled hair that seemed to defy gravity. He had an air of skepticism about him, but I sensed a flicker of curiosity in his eyes as he looked at me. Emma sat beside me, her hand resting on my knee, offering silent support that I desperately needed. "Jake," Dr. Miller began, adjusting his glasses as he shuffled through a stack of papers on his desk. "You mentioned experiencing visions. Can you describe them to me?" I swallowed hard, the memories flooding back like a tide. It's like I'm being drawn into another time. I see these rituals happening. People dressed in dark robes, chanting in a language I can't understand. And there's this overwhelming sense of dread. Emma leaned closer, her expression a mix of concern and determination. "He's been having these visions ever since we started investigating the disappearances. It's like something is trying to communicate with him, or worse, something is trying to claim him." Dr. Miller nodded, his brow furrowing as he considered my words. This is not uncommon for someone who is sensitive to their surroundings, especially when dealing with the remnants of trauma or, in your case, a dark legacy. "I'd like to try a regression hypnosis session. It might help you uncover more about these visions and what they mean." My heart raced at the thought. "You really think it could help?" "It's worth a shot, Jake. Just relax and allow yourself to drift. I'll guide you through it." With a deep breath, I nodded, trying to calm the storm inside me. Emma's hand squeezed mine reassuringly. "I'll be right here," she whispered. Dr. Miller instructed me to close my eyes and focus on my breathing. The room faded away as I concentrated, the gentle hum of his voice wrapping around me like a warm blanket. "I want you to visualize a staircase, Jake. With each step down, you'll feel more relaxed, more at ease. Count down from 10. As I descended the imaginary staircase, I felt a strange sensation wash over me. I could hear the faint echoes of chanting, distant yet familiar, intertwining with the rhythm of my heartbeat. 10, 9, 8. With each number, the weight of the world seemed to lift. Good. Now, when I say the word now, I want you to go to the place that feels most significant to you. Ready? Now." Suddenly, the room dissolved, and I was thrust into a different reality. The air was colder, and the smell of damp earth filled my lungs. I stood in a clearing, surrounded by towering trees that loomed like ancient sentinels. In the center was a circle of stones, worn and weathered, and the chanting grew louder. I could see figures moving around the circle, their faces obscured by hoods, but their voices were clear. They spoke of sacrifice, of rituals under the full moon, and I felt a chill creep down my spine. "What is this?" I murmured, my voice trembling. "Jake, can you see what's happening?" Dr. Miller's voice echoed in my mind, a tether to the present. "Yes, but it's like I'm watching from far away. I can't see their faces, but I feel something." "Feel what?" It's like they're calling me. I belong here." Panic surged within me, and I fought against the pull. "Focus, Jake. What do you see?" I squinted, trying to break through the fog. Suddenly, one figure stepped forward, lifting their hood. My breath caught in my throat. The face was mine, my features, but twisted with an unsettling familiarity. "No, this can't be," I gasped. "Jake, stay with me. What is this person doing?" "They're standing in the center of the circle, and..." My voice faltered as the vision shifted. I was now inside the circle, surrounded by the chanting figures. They reached out, beckoning me closer. "Jake!" Emma's voice pierced through the haze. "You're okay. Just breathe." The chant crescendoed, and I felt the ground beneath me tremble. "I'm scared," I cried out, the urgency clawing at my chest. "Focus on me, Jake. You're safe," Dr. Miller urged. "What else do you see?" The vision blurred, and I saw flashes of firelight, the flicker illuminating the stone faces around me. I could hear whispers now, fragments of words that made no sense. They're saying something about a sacrifice. They want me to be the one. Sacrifice. Emma's voice was laced with fear. "What do you mean?" "They're saying I'm the chosen one, that I must continue the legacy. My heart raced as the realization hit me like a freight train. No, I don't want this. The figures began to close in, their chants growing louder, and I felt the weight of their intentions pressing down on me. I can't. Jake, fight it. You have the power to break free. Dr. Miller's voice resonated through the chaos. I took a deep breath, reaching for the remnants of my own identity. I will not be a part of this, I screamed, and with that declaration, the chanting stopped. The figures froze, their faces contorted in confusion. Suddenly, I was pulled back, like a rubber band snapping. The vision shattered, and I gasped, my eyes flying open to find myself back in Dr. Miller's office. Sweat dripped down my forehead, and I could feel Emma's grip tightening around my hand. Jake, are you all right? She asked, her eyes wide with concern. I think so. My voice was shaky, but the weight of the vision still lingered in my chest. I saw something. I saw myself. Dr. Miller leaned forward, his expression serious. What did you see? There was a ritual. They wanted me to be part of it. They were calling me their chosen one, I said, my heart racing as the words spilled out. I felt like I belonged with them, like I was meant to continue something dark. Emma's face paled. What does that mean? Are you saying you're connected to the Seda? I don't know, but it felt real. I felt their power. It's like I'm tied to this legacy, and I don't want it. Dr. Miller nodded, absorbing every word. This is significant, Jake. It suggests that there's a deeper connection between you and the events of the past. You may very well be linked to these rituals in ways you don't yet understand. I don't want that, I said, my voice rising. I'm not a part of this. I refuse. Refusal is powerful, Dr. Miller replied calmly. But you must also confront this part of your heritage. It's not just about denying it. It's about understanding it. Only then can you break free from its hold. I looked at Emma, her eyes filled with determination. We have to stop this, Jake. We can't let whatever this is control you. I know, I said, my voice steadying, but I need to know more. I have to understand what this means for me, for us. Dr. Miller leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. Then we'll have to dig deeper. We need to explore your family history, any connections to the Seda. There might be answers buried in your lineage. I nodded, fear and resolve battling within me. I'll do whatever it takes. Good, Dr. Miller said, a hint of encouragement in his tone. But remember, Jake, facing the darkness is not easy. It requires courage and strength. You have both within you. Emma squeezed my hand again, and I felt a surge of warmth. We'll face it together, she promised. With those words, I felt a flicker of hope igniting in my chest. If I was to confront this darkness, I wouldn't be alone. We would uncover the truth and fight against the shadows that threaten to consume everything we love. As I left the office that day, I knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face whatever came next. The night was draped in a thick blanket of darkness, the kind that seemed to swallow the world whole. I stood at the edge of the forest, my heart thundering in my chest as I stared into the shadows. Emma was next to me, her presence a steadying force, though I could sense her own apprehension. Are you sure about this, Jake? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The moonlight flickered through the branches above, casting eerie shapes on the ground. I don't think we have a choice, I replied, trying to muster confidence. The recent disappearances weighed heavily on my mind, and the thought of being unable to do anything while my friends were in danger gnawed at my insides. If we're going to figure out what's happening, we need to confront it. Emma nodded slowly, but I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. I can't shake this feeling that we're walking into something we can't control. I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. I know, but we've come too far to turn back now. We owe it to everyone who's gone missing, and to ourselves. Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward, the crunch of leaves underfoot echoing in the silence. The deeper we ventured into the woods, the more the air thickened with an oppressive weight. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. "Jake," Emma said, her voice breaking the stillness. "Do you hear that?" I paused, straining my ears. Faint whispers danced on the wind, teasing the edges of my consciousness. "It's probably just the wind," I replied, though doubt crept in. The whispers seemed to beckon me further into the unknown. As we walked, I felt the temperature drop, a chill creeping down my spine. I could sense an unseen force lurking just beyond the reach of our flashlight beams. "Emma, do you think it could be related to the rituals?" She shivered, pulling her jacket closer around her shoulders. "It's possible. The old man we talked to said they would gather here during the full moon for their ceremonies." A knot twisted in my stomach as I recalled the stories of the cult, the rituals shrouded in secrecy and darkness. What if they're still happening? I ventured, my voice barely audible. "Then we need to find out," Emma stated firmly, her determination shining through her fear. "We can't let fear stop us. Not now." We pressed on, my heart racing with each step. The trees loomed overhead like ancient guardians, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. Suddenly, we came upon a clearing, and my breath hitched in my throat. In the center stood a circle of large stones, weathered by time, their surfaces etched with mysterious symbols that looked almost alive in the moonlight. "Jake, look at those," Emma exclaimed, pointing towards the stones. "They're just like the ones in the diary." "Yeah," I breathed, my voice trembling. "This must be the place." As we approached the circle, the air thickened even further, charged with an energy I couldn't explain. I could feel it crawling over my skin, sending shivers down my spine. "What if they're still here?" I asked, glancing nervously around the clearing. Emma stepped closer to the circle, her gaze fixed on the symbols. "We need to be careful. This is where the rituals took place. Who knows what kind of energy is still lingering here?" I nodded, my eyes scanning the perimeter of the clearing. Shadows danced at the edges, teasing my imagination. "We should document this," I suggested, pulling out my phone to take pictures of the stones and symbols. As I snapped a few photos, a sudden rustling in the bushes nearby made us both jump. "What was that?" Emma whispered, her eyes wide with fear. I don't know," I admitted, my heart racing. "Maybe it's just an animal." But deep down, I felt the dread growing, the sense that we were not alone. A sharp, eerie laugh echoed through the trees, sending a jolt of ice down my spine. "Did you hear that?" I gasped, looking at Emma. Her face paled as she nodded. "We need to get out of here," she urged, backing away slowly. Before I could respond, a low chant began to fill the air, the words indistinguishable but hauntingly familiar. It felt as if they were pulling me in, drawing me deeper into the heart of the darkness. I felt entranced, compelled to step forward, even as every rational part of my mind screamed at me to run. "Jake!" Emma shouted, her voice breaking through my fog. "Don't go closer." I shook my head, trying to clear the confusion. "I can't help it, Emma. It's like something is calling to me." "Don't listen to it," she insisted, stepping forward to grab my arm. "We have to leave now." But then I saw them, figures emerging from the shadows, cloaked in dark robes, their faces obscured. The chanting grew louder, echoing in my mind, drowning out my thoughts. I felt a surge of fear as the realization hit me. We had stumbled into something far beyond our understanding. "Jake, we need to go." Emma pulled at me harder, her voice filled with urgency. I blinked, finally breaking free from the trance. "You're right, we can't stay here." But as we turned to leave, the figures stepped into the light, their eyes glinting with an otherworldly knowledge. "Welcome," one of them said, his voice smooth yet chilling. "We've been expecting you." My heart raced as I looked at Emma, panic etched on her face. "What do they want?" she whispered, her grip tightening on my arm. "I don't know," I replied, my voice shaky. "But we have to stay strong." The cloaked figure took a step closer, the others following suit. "You've uncovered our secrets, children, but it's not too late to join us. You have a part to play in our eternal cycle. Join you? I spat, anger surging through me. You think we'd want anything to do with this? With you. The figure chuckled. A low, rumbling sound that sent chills through my body. Ah, but you don't understand. You are connected to us, to the past. Your bloodline flows with the history of our rituals. Leave us alone, Emma shouted, her voice rising above the chants that surrounded us. We won't be part of this, but the figure simply smiled, a knowing look in his eyes. You cannot escape your destiny, Jake. The darkness is part of you. Embrace it, and you will find power beyond your imagination. I took a step back, my pulse racing. No, I refuse to let you control me. A sudden gust of wind whipped through the clearing, extinguishing the flickering light from our flashlights. In an instant, we were plunged into darkness, the chanting growing more frenzied. I could feel the panic rising in my chest as I fumbled to find Emma's hand, clutching it tightly. Stay close to me, I urged, my voice barely above a whisper. We stumbled backward, trying to find our way out of the clearing, but the shadows seemed to close in around us. The chanting morphed into a cacophony of voices, each one vying for attention, drowning out all rational thought. Jake! Emma cried out, her voice trembling with fear. What do? We have to keep moving, I shouted, forcing my legs to carry me forward, back toward the trees. But just as we reached the edge of the clearing, I felt an icy grip on my shoulder. I turned to see one of the figures standing right behind me, its face obscured by the hood of its cloak. I froze, terror coursing through my veins. You cannot escape, it whispered, its voice a chilling melody. You belong to us. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I pulled away, adrenaline surging through my body. Get away from me, I yelled, pushing past the figure and dragging Emma with me. We ran, the darkness closing in behind us, the chanting echoing in our ears. I could feel the weight of the shadows pressing down on us, desperate to pull us back into their embrace. Keep going, Jake, Emma shouted, her breath coming in gasps. We burst through the trees, the moonlight spilling onto the path ahead. I glanced back, the figures now mere silhouettes against the darkness of the clearing. They're not following us, Emma panted, her eyes wide with fear. I didn't feel safe, not yet. We have to get as far away as possible, I urged, pulling her along. As we ran, I could still hear the whispers, the calls of the darkness trying to reach us. But I refused to let it win. We had come too far, faced too many fears. We couldn't let the shadows consume us. Finally, we reached the edge of the forest, the lights of the town flickering in the distance. It felt like a lifeline, a sanctuary from the horrors we had just witnessed. Panting heavily, we slowed to a stop, leaning against a tree for support. My heart felt like it was going to burst from my chest. Did that really just happen? I gasped, looking at Emma. I think so, she replied. The night was thick with tension as Emma and I ventured deeper into the forest, the shadows elongating under the silver light of the full moon. My heart raced, each beat echoing in my ears as if the very forest was alive, pulsating with anticipation. The air was heavy, saturated with an unsettling energy that made every hair on my body stand on end. I could feel it, the presence that had haunted my dreams. The dark shadow that had whispered my name in the stillness of the night was near. Jake, are you sure about this? Emma's voice pierced through the silence, laced with concern. I turned to her, seeing the worry etched on her face, illuminated by the moonlight. Her eyes were wide, reflecting fear that mirrored my own. I don't know, Emma, I admitted, my voice trembling, but I have to find out what's happening. This darkness, it's calling to me. I can't just ignore it. She took a step closer, her brow furrowing. We can turn back, you know? We don't have to do this. No, I insisted, shaking my head. We need to understand what's going on. If these disappearances are connected to that cult, we can't just leave it be. With a reluctant sigh, Emma nodded, though I could see the anxiety written across her features. We pressed on, the underbrush crunching beneath our feet as we navigated through the tangled trees. I felt an overwhelming urge to push forward, a compulsion that seemed to draw me closer to the heart of the forest. After what felt like an eternity, we stumbled upon a clearing. In its center stood a circle of stones, weathered and ancient, their surfaces etched with cryptic symbols that sent a shudder down my spine. The moonlight bathed the area in an ethereal glow, casting eerie shadows that danced around us. I felt an insatiable pull toward the circle, an undeniable connection that made my heart race. "Jake?" Emma's voice trembled as she stepped back, her instincts telling her to flee. "This feels wrong. We should go." But I couldn't. I was entranced, as if something within me was awakening, something that had lain dormant for far too long. "Emma, wait. I need to see this. I need to know. Please," she pleaded, her eyes wide with fear. "You don't have to do this. Whatever it is, it's not worth it." "Maybe it is," I replied, my voice low and determined. "Maybe it's the key to everything. The missing people, the whispers, this darkness that's been following me." Taking a deep breath, I stepped into the circle. The moment my foot touched the ground inside the stone formation, a shockwave of energy coursed through me, as if I had crossed an invisible threshold. I could feel the air thicken, the atmosphere shifting as if the forest itself held its breath. A vision surged forth, vivid and disorienting, pulling me into an abyss of memories not my own. I was no longer standing in the clearing. Instead, I found myself in a dimly lit chamber, surrounded by figures cloaked in shadows, their faces obscured. They chanted in a language I couldn't understand, their voices a haunting melody that resonated deep within my soul. And at the center of their circle stood a figure that made my blood run cold. It was me, or rather, a version of me from another time. "Jake!" Emma's voice echoed in my ears, piercing through the veil of my vision. "Get out of there!" But I was trapped, suspended in this surreal moment, unable to respond to her desperate pleas. I watched as the other Jake raised his arms, a ritualistic gesture that felt both foreign and familiar. The air crackled with energy, and a sense of foreboding washed over me. I wanted to scream, to break free, but my body felt heavy, as if the very ground beneath me was pulling me deeper into its grasp. Suddenly, the chanting intensified, and I felt a presence, cold and malevolent, encircling me. It whispered secrets in a language I could almost understand, seducing me with promises of power and knowledge. I struggled against it, but the weight of the shadows was suffocating, wrapping around me like chains. "Jake, please!" Emma cried out again, her voice strained with urgency. "I can't let you do this." The vision shifted, and I was back in the clearing, gasping for breath, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and decay. I blinked, trying to regain my bearings, but the figures were still there, standing at the edge of my vision, their faces just out of reach. They were watching me, waiting for something, an invocation, a sacrifice, perhaps. "Emma!" I shouted, my voice raw. I can't fight this. Just hold on," she yelled, stepping closer to the circle, her determination igniting a spark of hope within me. "I'm right here. You're not alone." In that moment, I felt a flicker of clarity amidst the chaos. Emma's presence grounded me, tethering me to reality. I focused on her, the warmth of her spirit pushing back against the encroaching darkness. "Emma, I think I need to confront this. I need to understand why this is happening to me." "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice trembling, but I could see the resolve in her eyes. "What if it's too late?" "I have to try," I replied, my heart pounding. "It's the only way to break the cycle. We can't let this darkness take anyone else." As I steadied my breath, the chanting around me grew louder, more insistent. The figures began to step closer, their forms becoming more defined, revealing the eerie countenance of those lost to the cult's rituals. I recognized some of their faces, people from our town who had disappeared without a trace. "Jake," Emma whispered, fear flooding her voice. "What if they want you?" With a surge of courage, I stepped further into the center of the circle. my feet planted firmly on the ground. If that's what they want, then they will have to face me. The figures paused, their chanting faltering. I felt the weight of their stares, the intensity of their despair pressing down on me. "You're not taking anyone else," I shouted, my voice rising above the cacophony. "I won't let you." The shadows recoiled at my defiance, and for a moment, I felt a shift in the energy around me. I could see the anguish etched on the faces of the lost souls, a mixture of sadness and rage that reverberated through the air. "We are bound," one of the figures whispered, its voice a haunting echo. "The cycle must continue." "No!" I yelled, shaking my head vehemently. "I refuse to be part of this. I will not let your pain consume me." Suddenly, I felt a surge of power within me, a deep-seated strength that had been awakened by my defiance. The shadows began to waver, their forms flickering like candle flames caught in a gust of wind. Emma stepped forward, her eyes fierce and unwavering. "We're here to end this once and for all." Her words ignited a fire within me, and I felt the connection to the spirits, not as enemies but as lost souls seeking release. "You don't have to be trapped here. You can find peace." I tried to reach them, to show them that there was a way out of the darkness. The figures hesitated, their chanting faltering as my words reverberated through the circle. "Release us," one of them pleaded, its voice trembling with sorrow. "We are bound by blood, by sacrifice." "No more sacrifices," Emma shouted, her voice ringing with conviction. "Let go of the past and find your freedom." As if in response, the shadows began to shift, swirling around us like a tempest. The air crackled with energy, and I could feel the presence of the spirits intensifying. I closed my eyes, focusing on the light within me, the warmth of hope and determination igniting my soul. In that moment, I understood. This was not just about me. It was about breaking the chains that had bound our families to this cycle of despair. Together, Emma and I had the power to change everything. "Together!" I called out, feeling Emma's hand clasp around mine, our connection solidifying our resolve. "We can end this." As our voices rose in unison, the shadows surged forward, their forms twisting and contorting in desperation. The energy in the air crackled, and I felt the weight of the darkness pressing down on us. But with every ounce of strength we summoned, we pushed back against it, refusing to allow fear to consume us. "Let go," I cried, pouring every bit of emotion into my words. "You are not bound by this darkness. You can choose to be free." The shadows began to dissolve, their forms dissipating into the night air, and I felt a sense of release wash over me. The weight that had pressed down upon my heart began to lift, replaced by a warmth that spread through my entire being. I could see the figures flickering, their faces softening in relief as they began to fade. "Thank you," one of them whispered, and I could feel the gratitude emanating from the very essence of their being. "Thank you for freeing us." As the last remnants of darkness melted away, I felt a surge of light envelop me, wrapping around Emma and me like a protective cocoon. We were no longer fighting. The night air was thick with an unsettling tension as Emma and I stood at the edge of the ancient stone circle, the moon casting an eerie glow over the clearing. The shadows danced around us, flickering in the moonlight like ghosts yearning to break free. My heart raced as I felt the oppressive weight of the presence that had haunted me for weeks. It was closer now, almost tangible, and I could hear whispers carried by the wind, words I couldn't understand, but they chilled me to the bone. "Jake, are you sure about this?" Emma's voice trembled slightly, breaking through the heavy silence that surrounded us. Her eyes were wide with fear, reflecting the moonlight as she looked at me, searching for reassurance. "I have to know, Emma. I can't keep running from this," I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. The pull of the circle was strong, and every instinct in my body screamed at me to step forward, to embrace whatever awaited me in the center. This is where it all began. We need to understand what happened here, what happened to those people. I get that, but what if it's too dangerous? She shifted her weight nervously, glancing back toward the dark woods as if they might swallow her whole. "I need you with me," I said, my voice firm despite the quaking in my heart. "If we face this together, we can figure it out." I reached out, taking her hand in mine. The warmth of her grip steadied me, anchoring me in the swirling chaos of my thoughts. She nodded slowly, determination creeping into her eyes. "Okay, together then. But promise me we won't do anything reckless." "Promise?" I said, squeezing her hand before letting go. As we stepped into the circle, the air grew colder, and a low hum resonated in my ears. It felt as if the very ground beneath us was alive, pulsating with energy. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that unseen eyes were upon us, judging our every move. The symbols carved into the stones glowed faintly, illuminating fragments of the past that seemed to claw at the edges of my mind. I remembered the diary we had found in the abandoned house, the rituals, the names, the connection to my ancestors. The realization of my lineage weighed heavily on my shoulders, but I couldn't dwell on it now. "Jake, look," Emma whispered, pointing toward the center of the circle. I turned to see shadows coalescing, forming indistinct shapes that flickered in and out of existence. They were whispering, their voices blending into a cacophony of unintelligible sounds. Panic surged within me, and I felt myself being pulled into their midst, a magnetic force drawing me closer. "Stay close to me," Emma shouted, her voice breaking through the haze. I turned to her, and in her eyes, I saw the same fear that gripped my heart. "I can't help it. It's like they want me." I yelled back, my voice strained. "Don't listen to them. Fight it," she urged, stepping forward, her determination shining through the fear. But the shadows were relentless, and as I moved deeper into the circle, I felt the world around me twist and dissolve. My surroundings faded away, replaced by a vision of the past, a ritual unfolding before my eyes. I saw a group of hooded figures, their chants echoing in my mind, and at the center stood a young man who looked just like me. "No, no, this can't be real," I gasped, clutching my head as the memories flooded in. "Jake, focus on me." Emma's voice pierced through the dark, and I turned, desperate for her presence. But she was becoming a blur, fading into the mist of the vision. "Emma, don't leave me," I shouted, but my voice felt swallowed by the shadows. The chanting grew louder, drowning out my thoughts as the figures in the vision turned their heads toward me, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light. I was losing myself in their depths, the darkness surrounding me like a shroud. Suddenly, I felt a hand on my shoulder, and I jolted back to reality. Emma stood beside me, her face etched with concern. "Jake, you have to fight it. You're stronger than this." "I can't. They're calling me," I stammered, the pull of the shadows almost too much to bear. "Then let's call back," she shouted, her voice fierce. "You're not alone, Jake. I'm right here." In that moment, I realized that the darkness thrived on fear. I took a deep breath, grounding myself in her words. "You're right. I won't let them take me." With newfound resolve, I focused on the shadows and the figures that loomed before me. "You don't own me," I declared, my voice echoing through the clearing. The chanting faltered, and for the briefest moment, I saw hesitation in their movements. I turned to Emma, who nodded fiercely. "That's it. Keep fighting." I stepped forward, forcing my way through the oppressive energy. "I refuse to be a pawn in your game. I won't let fear dictate my life." The shadows writhed, their forms twisting and contorting in response to my defiance. I could feel their anger, a palpable force that threatened to overwhelm me. But I stood firm, drawing strength from Emma, from the people who had disappeared, from the truth that needed to be revealed. As I pressed on, I could hear a new voice rising above the chanting. A familiar voice, one that sent chills down my spine. "You were meant to serve, Jake. You belong with us." "No!" I shouted, but the figure stepped forward, revealing itself as a shadowy silhouette of the leader of the Seda. "You cannot escape your destiny, my grandson." "Grandson?" I gasped, the weight of his words crashing down on me. Yes, you carry the bloodline. You are the key to our power, he hissed, his voice dripping with dark allure. I shook my head, trying to dispel the fog clouding my thoughts. I refuse to be part of this. I won't be your sacrifice. The leader stepped closer, and I felt the cold tendrils of his influence wrap around me. You think you can defy your heritage? You are destined to continue the legacy of our ancestors. Not this legacy, I shouted back, my anger fueling my strength. I choose my own path. Suddenly, Emma stepped forward, her voice fierce and unwavering. He is not alone. You don't control him, and you never will. The figures hesitated, their shadows flickering indecisively. I felt the energy of the circle shifting, and with it, the tension that had gripped my heart began to ease. Together, we will break this cycle, Emma declared, her hand reaching for mine. I grasped her hand tightly, feeling the warmth of her resolve seep into me. We are not afraid of you, I echoed, our voices melding into a unified front against the encroaching darkness. As we stood together, I could feel the shadows retreating, their power waning in the face of our defiance. The dark figures began to dissolve, their forms losing coherence, and I realized that they thrived on fear, on isolation. Fight with me. Fight for the lives they've taken, Emma shouted, and with her words, I summoned every ounce of strength within me. The shadows roared in anger, and I felt a rush of energy course through me. You will not take anyone else, I cried, and with that declaration, I surged forward, pulling Emma with me as we charged into the center of the circle. The moment we crossed the threshold, the energy shifted dramatically. The oppressive air lifted, and the whispers of the past faded into a distant echo. I could see the figures retreating, their forms disintegrating like smoke in the wind. Together, I shouted, raising our intertwined hands. We break the cycle. With one final push, the shadows exploded into a burst of light, illuminating the clearing and driving the darkness away. I felt a wave of relief wash over me as the energy of the circle transformed. No longer a place of fear, but a sanctuary of hope. As the last remnants of the shadows dissipated, I collapsed to the ground, breathless and trembling. Emma fell beside me, her eyes wide with disbelief. We did it, she whispered, her voice barely a breath. Yeah, we did, I replied, still trying to process what had just happened. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our victory slowly sinking in. The night air was now calm, and the moon shone brightly overhead, bathing us in a gentle light. But as I caught my breath, a lingering fear settled in my chest. I knew this wasn't over. The shadows had been defeated for now, but the truth of my heritage loomed large, and the past would always be a part of me. Emma turned to me, her expression a mix of concern and determination. Jake, whatever happens next, we'll face it together, right? I nodded, squeezing her hand tightly. Always. The fight against the darkness was far from over, but for the first time, I felt a flicker of hope. Together, we would confront whatever awaited us, and I would not let the shadows define my future. The air was thick with tension as I stood in the center of the stone circle, staring into the abyss of hooded figures. Their chants echoed through the stillness of the forest, a haunting melody that sent shivers down my spine. Emma's desperate voice cut through the chaos, but it felt distant, as if she were calling from another world. I was teetering on the edge of some unfathomable truth, the weight of the moment pressing down on me like a suffocating shroud. Jake, please, come back to me. Emma's voice was laced with fear, and I could see her struggling against the invisible force that held her back, the shadows reaching out to her as if they were alive. I felt a pull, an ancient calling that resonated deep within me. It was as if the ground beneath me was alive, vibrating with the energy of the spirits that had been lost to time. I was caught in a web of memories, visions swirling around me like autumn leaves caught in a whirlwind. The chanting intensified, and I could see the figures more clearly now. Their faces were obscured by the hoods, but their presence was palpable, a collective consciousness that sought something from me. Suddenly, one of the hooded figures stepped forward, and my heart raced as I recognized the silhouette. The voice that came from beneath the hood was both familiar and foreign, sending a jolt of recognition through my veins. "Jake," it rasped, the tone echoing with a chilling resonance. "You have returned to us." I felt my breath hitch in my throat. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice trembling despite my effort to sound brave. "What do you want from me?" "You already know," the figure replied, lowering its hood, revealing a face I had only seen in old photographs. My heart dropped as I looked into the eyes of my grandfather. My long-lost grandfather, the man who had vanished from our lives like a ghost, leaving only whispers and unanswered questions behind. "Grandpa," I whispered, my mind racing to comprehend the impossible. "But how? Why are you here?" His expression was a mix of sorrow and pride. "I have watched over you, Jake, even from the shadows. There is so much you do not understand, but you are part of a legacy much greater than yourself. You were chosen. Chosen. The word tasted bitter in my mouth. Chosen for what? To become a part of this madness? To continue the cycle of disappearances? He shook his head, a deep sadness etched into his features. "No, my boy, to break it. The sacrifices, they were made to protect this town from an ancient curse. The darkness you sense, the shadows that haunt you, they are the souls of those who were lost, trapped between worlds. I believed that by performing the rituals, I could keep them at bay. But it didn't work," I shouted, frustration boiling over. "People are still disappearing. This isn't protection. It's a prison. I thought I could control it," he admitted, looking down at the ground. "But the more I tried to suppress it, the stronger it became. The spirits demanded a leader, and I was too weak to resist. But you, Jake, you have the strength to confront it. You have the power to end this." I felt as if the ground was shifting beneath my feet. "End it? How? I don't even know what I'm doing here. I'm just a psychology student trying to make sense of my life." "You are more than that," he urged, stepping closer. "You carry my blood, the blood of those who have faced the darkness before. Your studies have prepared you for this moment. You understand fear, anxiety. You understand the mind. Use it to confront what lies ahead." Emma, still struggling against the unseen force, called out again. "Jake, don't listen to him. We can find a way out of this. We can leave together." I turned to her, desperation flooding my heart. "Emma, I can't just abandon this. If there's a chance to save those who are trapped, to stop the cycle of terror, I need to try. Jake, please," she pleaded, her eyes wide with panic. "You don't know what you're getting into." But something deep within me stirred, a flicker of understanding ignited by my grandfather's words. I felt the weight of my heritage, the legacy of those who had come before me. "I have to confront this darkness," I said, my voice steadying. "I need to face my fears, to understand what this all means." My grandfather nodded, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "That's it, Jake. You must embrace your identity. These spirits are tied to you, and they will not relent until they receive closure. You have to show them compassion, guide them to the light." The chanting rose to a fever pitch, and I could feel the air crackle with energy. I stepped forward, breaking free from the grip of fear that bound me. "I will not be your sacrifice," I shouted, my voice ringing out over the cacophony. "I am not here to repeat the past. I am here to end it." The figures recoiled, their chanting faltering for a moment. My grandfather's gaze bore into me, encouraging me to continue. "Speak to them, Jake. Show them that they are not forgotten." Taking a deep breath, I called out to the shadows. "I understand your pain. I know what it means to be lost, to feel abandoned. But I am here now. Let me help you find peace." The figures hesitated, their forms flickering like candle flames. I felt the energy shift, the oppressive weight of the darkness beginning to lift. Emma's voice, filled with unwavering support, joined mine. "You are not alone. We remember you, and we will not let you fade away." The chanting transformed into a symphony of whispers, the voices of the lost souls swirling around us. I could feel their sorrow, their anger, but also their longing for release. "You are free to move on," I cried out, my heart racing. "Your suffering ends with us. Let go of your pain and step into the light." In that moment, the figures began to dissolve, their forms becoming ethereal wisps of smoke. The heavy atmosphere lifted, and I felt a warmth enveloping me, as if the spirits were embracing the offer of peace. My grandfather looked on, pride shining in his eyes. "You have done well, my boy," he said softly. "You have broken the chains of despair that have bound us for too long." As the last of the shadows faded, I turned to Emma, who was now free from the invisible hold. We stood together, breathless, the forest around us transforming from a place of dread to one of hope. "Did we really?" she began, her voice trembling with disbelief. "We did," I replied, a sense of relief washing over me. "We faced the darkness, and we won." But even as I spoke those words, a lingering doubt crept into my mind. I turned to my grandfather, who remained in the fading light. "But what about you? What happens now?" He smiled, a gentle expression that was both sad and reassuring. "I am but a remnant of what once was. My time has passed, but you are the future. Use your knowledge, your heart, and your strength to guide this town away from fear and into the light." "But I don't want to be a leader," I protested. "I just want to live a normal life." "Normal is but a fleeting illusion," he replied, the shadows of the past beginning to envelop him. "Embrace your path, Jake. Use your gifts to help others. You have the power to heal, to change the narrative of this town." With those final words, he began to dissipate, merging with the light that surrounded us. I reached out, desperate to hold on to him, but he was gone, leaving behind only the echoes of his voice and the warmth of his presence. Emma took my hand, grounding me in the reality of the moment. "Jake, we did it. We really did it." Her eyes sparkled with a mix of disbelief and triumph. I nodded, still processing everything that had just happened. "But the work isn't over. We have to help the town to make sure this never happens again. I can't let the past control us." "Together," she affirmed, squeezing my hand tightly, "we'll face whatever comes next." As we walked out of the forest, I felt a newfound sense of purpose surging through me. I was no longer just Jake, the anxious psychology student. I was Jake, the one who had faced the darkness and emerged stronger. I had a responsibility now, a duty to confront the shadows, both within myself and within the community. And as we stepped into the light, I knew that together, Emma and I could forge a new path, one that would honor the past while embracing the future. No more whispers in the dark. It was time to bring the light to our town.